Oh dear. Okay. All right. Segon Sewagwegong. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today. When I was in my late teens in the 70s, I have to admit that I was kind of blissfully unaware of much of the initiatives that were going on in Canada towards gender equality. It's only kind of as we progress through our careers, we start to realize that what the bigger picture is. As my mom has always said, youth is wasted on the young. So at the age of 18, I bought a coupon book. And in that book, there was a free flying lesson at the Warley Wellington Flying Club. And I thought, well, that's cool. I'd really like to do that. Like, that sounds like a really kind of fun thing to do. Am I missing something?
Just closer.
Closer. Okay, closer. Sorry. Now you can hear me? Is that better? Okay. Did you miss all that? You don't want me to repeat that, right? Okay, good. All right. Anyway, so I bought this coupon book. And I said to my current boyfriend, I said, I'm going to take this flying lesson. I think that sounds like an excellent idea. He said, you can't do that. You're a girl. I have no idea what happened to him. He could be out there. He could be out there almost anywhere, really. You know, he was wrong, of course. I could do that, even though I was a girl. I took the flying lesson and I got totally hooked on it. So I spent all my money and I sold my car and I spent all that money on flying lessons. And I still didn't, I was close, but I wasn't licensed yet. So I thought, what am I going to do? It was just a little bit out of reach. And I was sitting in the kitchen of my neighbor. We shared a house and kind of a wall between us on the upstairs of a house in Kitchener, which is where I was living at the time. And I went over and we were having coffee and I said, I'm going to join the Air Force. I think that's what I'm going to do. And she said, she didn't hardly react. She said, oh, cool. Let me know how that goes. You know, so down I went to the recruiting center and it was March of 1980 when I went. And if I can segue just a little bit at this point, I'd just like to say that progress towards the rights of individuals, regardless of gender or any other difference, can only occur if all of the population is on board with the change. I've always treasured the support of the men in my life, minus that boyfriend when I was 18, of course, and who figured it out. I saw him later, actually. He said, I was really wrong, wasn't I? I said, you sure were, you know. So anyway, back to the recruiting center. So when I walked in, the captain behind the desk said to me, what can I do for you? And I said, I wanted to be a pilot. And he said, oh, you're my first one. And I thought, how could I be the first pilot ever to have come to the recruiting center in Kitchener? That's weird, you know. I didn't know that, though, that on the 1st of March of that year, this was the 8th of March, on the 1st of March, the Canadian Forces had actually opened the trade up to women. So I was within a week of them opening the trade without even knowing it. Serendipity, right? I had to do a whole bunch of tests. I had to go to Toronto to do aircrew selection. I had to pass the medical, which was interesting, but I was selected. And there was 5 female candidates on this selection course with me. 3 of them already had commercial pilot licenses, and none of them were selected. I was the only one. So that was a little shocking to my system. All right, so let me just change my screen here. Hopefully, I hit the right button. Ta-da! There we go. So Chilliwack, BC was where basic training occurred in those days. That base has since been closed. I was in a completely female platoon. We did have a couple token males in the front row there. Those were the instructors. And I don't think then that I even realized that basic training was going to be the last time I was surrounded by so many women while I was in the military. I was about to get pretty isolated. Flying training in those days took place in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, and in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. The initial course was on the Beechcraft Musketeer, another airplane that has been retired, story of my life. Single engine propeller, pretty familiar to me with my basic flying training that I'd already done in the civilian world. And the first solo flight that you had was celebrated by a dunk in a tank of icy cold water.
If I
Manitoba.
could just interrupt for a second, we're not seeing the slides. We're seeing the PowerPoint setup, but we're not seeing the slides change as you go.
Oh, really? You only see the first?
Yeah. So
Well,
Andy, the reason for that is you did the share and then started the show. You got to start the show first and then share the show, not the app.
he's coming to show share. Stand by. I'm going to get out of the way again.
So you want to stop sharing
Yeah, that's what we have. Okay.
and then start sharing again, but don't pick the PowerPoint app, pick the presentation that's in progress.
Okay. So speech. PowerPoint. Okay. So
The show has to already be running.
yeah. Okay. That's Now, can you see that?
No.
How about that?
Nope.
And how about that? You're not seeing anything.
Nope. Oh, wait a minute. We got something now.
Okay.
Now we have the PowerPoint app.
Okay, so you got the PowerPoint app, so we'll start the slideshow now.
No,
No.
you're sharing that.
You're sharing.
And
Okay, well, let's share that. Okay, and then we go into app windows.
Highly technical. You guys all have all afternoon, right?
Yeah, well, okay. Are we seeing anything there?
no, we're still seeing the PowerPoint app.
Okay. I'll take anybody's help. 'Cause-
Border collie.
yeah, okay, we'll stop sharing.
I think at this point it's probably easier to stop the slideshow and just show the screens in the PowerPoint app.
Graham, you're suggesting to hit share first? Stop the slideshow first, okay.
Stop the slideshow. Start the
Okay.
slideshow and then share.
Okay, start the slideshow off the computer, okay.
And then share.
Now we'll see how that works. Okay. To here. Share
You
this.
gotta start the slideshow first. Don't do that. You gotta start the slideshow first.
Start the slideshow first, okay. Let's downsize that.
Start the slideshow.
Okay, slideshow. Okay, from current slide. Okay, are you getting what you want?
Now,
Okay. And then we can, okay. So what are you guys getting now?
Nothing.
Oh, okay, are you getting anything now?
Nope.
Is it set up on two screens or one screen? How is it set up?
Should be on one screen. I don't know. Don, any ideas? Mhm. Okay, so we basically are going
I used to
to
let my kid do it.
start the slide. Okay, so. Okay,
So where's your Zoom? So is this screen the same as that screen?
well, now we're sort of into so many different screens
Yeah.
that,
Minimize that.
sorry about that.
Zoom, click on the Zoom at the bottom.
Well, Zoom in the bottom is exactly what we've got here.
Okay, there should be a Zoom control. Can I see this for a second?
Yeah, sure.
There should be a Zoom control. Where is the Zoom control?
I think you enlarge that one too.
This one here?
Yeah.
Might find.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So go to share. So we should see this one here. Share.
Okay,
You guys see it now?
Yes.
There we go.
okay, okay, we're good. Okay. You are screen sharing. Okay, don't show this screen again. Okay. Well, we hope. We hope next slide.
I didn't.
Okay, I don't think we're out of the woods yet. Okay,
Should be,
could we have the technical? Oh, there we are. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now everybody. All right, see if I can find where I was.
Thanks for your patience, Micky.
Okay, so we're back. Ta-da! So flying training again was in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan was advanced flying training. initial course was on the little yellow airplane at the top, the Beechcraft Musketeer. Single engine prop. As I said, I was quite familiar with that single engine idea, although not with a low wing. My training had been on the Cessna, which was a high wing airplane. And we talked about the dunk in the cold water. So Moose Jaw, of course, was a whole new ball game. So the Tudor aircraft is a single engine jet. The same aircraft the Air Force's snowbirds fly still in demonstration. Much faster than the Musketeer, of course. A lot less time to think about what we're doing. And when I went through the Musketeer, we weren't allowed to do aerobatics because the airplane was getting old and the wings were starting to go like kind of wobbly. So they thought maybe just pulling it up and doing stuff with it was not a good plan. And I totally agree with that kind of thing. So my memorable moment, I guess, the one where you know, you always have times in your life when things happen, you say, I learned about something from that. Well, I learned about flying from one day on the Tudor. My instructor had sent me out into the area, do aerobatics, he said, come back when you get low, do a couple touch and goes on the outer runway, and then come in for a landing. Got it. Out I went. Aeros are fun, especially when you're by yourself. They really are, because there's nobody to judge what you're doing. You just woohoo, and off you go. And I was starting to get low on gas, so I thought, well, I'll come back in and land. And Moose Jaw had two parallel runways. The outer runway was the one you did touch and goes on, and then you join the pattern for the inner runway. That's where you did your full stop and you pulled off into the ramp. So as I came back in, I was starting to do it. I did one touch and go on the outer runway. As I came around, I thought, what is that off the end of the runway off to the west? It looked really weird, like it was really dark and it looked like a storm. I thought, what's going on? So I did one more, and as I went now, it was a lot closer, like it had moved really, really quickly. So I called the tower and I said, there's weather coming into the west. Have a look. Should we come in and land? And so they did their thing, and I kept going. Okay, I'm still flying at 240 nautical miles an hour. So you get around there pretty quick. And as I came into final approach, a guy came out of the area because the tower had called everybody back in, seeing the weather coming, and he got in front of me. So I had to fly through. So I flew down between the runways, and as I started to go around, they were delayed on calling me over to the inner. You can't turn until they tell you. I flew right into this cloud thing, whatever it was at the time. I didn't know. And everything went away. Now, you must know that I was at the beginning stages of my flying training. I had done some instrument flying, so I could fly on instruments a little bit, but I didn't know how to do an approach to come and do an IFR, it's called IFR, Instrument Flight Rules approach. I'd only really flown around under VMC, Visual Meteorological Conditions. So by the time I transitioned to the inside of the airplane from looking out the window at nothing, just like a gray ball, the inside of a ball of cotton, that's what it looked like. I realized that I had started the turn. I was in about a 90-degree back turn and the airplane was doing this. So I went, well, that's not good. My instinct said, run away. So I slapped the stick to neutral. I powered the airplane up and I started to climb. And I called them and I was honest and I said, I'm lost. Pilots never say they're lost. They're not supposed to say they're lost. I was a baby pilot. I said, I'm lost. So they said, climb until you break out visual. I went, okay. I broke out at 19,000 feet. Flew right through an airway. And up I went, and I'm alone up there. And I remember that I came in because I was low on fuel, right? And so they went, okay, fly a lost pattern. Do you know how to do that? I said, yeah, 2-minute triangle. Yeah, do that. So I'm flying these 2-minute legs, and I'm watching my fuel, but not really watching my fuel because I'm thinking they're going to make me punch out of this airplane. Now, that's an airplane that you wear a parachute. You can. It's got an ejection seat. So I thought, I'm going to punch out of an airplane at 19,000 feet. I don't want to do this, you know? And they vectored another guy up to me. And I flew my first formation trip to Regina, Saskatchewan, which was clear at the moment. So I flew lead because I had never flown formation either. It was not wise to put me on anybody's wing at that stage of my career. He brought me in, this other instructor, set me up on final. I landed the airplane in Regina, and as he flew around to come and join me, he flew into this crud. It had moved 45 miles in that really quick time. And it was a fire that had happened out around Swift Current and had just eaten the entire prairies, and it was just a wall of smoke. That's what it was. But everything went 0-0. Like it was, you couldn't see, there was nothing. It was a really exciting day, let's just say. I called back to my unit and I talked to my instructor. He said, I told you to stay in the circuit. And I said, well, I tried really hard to do so. And he said, I'm going to come and get you. So he flew to Regina because the stuff had blown through. And I got to sit as a passenger on the way home, which was kind of pleasant for a change. So he said, I think you've done enough flying for the day. I agreed. I totally agreed. So I was posted to 436 Squadron in Trenton once I graduated from Moose Jaw. This was in 1982. The option to choose the aircraft you fly was not given to us because we were on a trial. So myself and Melody, the female course mate of mine, we were going Hercules, whether we liked it or not, we were going to Hercules. So I thought that's the biggest thing I've ever seen, you know, like, holy smoke, what a place. So 436 at the time was a hugely misogynistic place to work. I am to this day grateful that there was other women on the squadron with me, both at pilots and navigators. But the attitude of my course mates, or my squadron mates, was kind of dictated by management, just like it is in most places, right? The commanding officer tended to be a little bit more out of it. I always thought they were a little oblivious to what was going on, but the prevailing members of the prevailing attitudes of the male members was not particularly welcoming, let's just say. And it came on a crashing head on a trip to Lahr, Germany in 1985. There's 2 crews on the ground. The other aircraft commander, which is what the Air Force calls their captains, was a woman. Her crew was there. We were out for dinner. My crew was there. My AC, my aircraft commander, wasn't with us either. And the first officer on the other crew was sitting across the table from me. He was new to the squadron. He outranked me by 2 levels. There's a lot of hierarchy and ranking in the military, which I think you're probably quite aware of. So he was a major. I was a lieutenant. At the end of the dinner and kind of out of the blue, he just slammed his hand down on the desk and started into this profane rant at me and all my female peoples. And the nerve of me, how could I possibly be doing this job? And I should be at home. Honestly, he said to me, you should be home having babies.
Wow.
I know. And at this point, I'd had enough. There'd been a whole lot of this kind of crap going on. And I'd had enough. I got out a pen and a couple of paper napkins. I wrote down everything he said. And when he was done, it was about a 10-minute rant. Everybody else at the table just froze in position, and I waited for him to finish. I said, "Are you done?" He said, "Yep, I'm okay." Put it in my purse, and I went back and I called my boss, my captain, and I said, "I'm going to charge him when we get home. I've had enough." And he freaked, of course. I lit this keg of dynamite off. So by the time I got back to the squadron, I was so surprised that they didn't see this coming, because it was so obvious to all of us, all the women on the squadron, that there was a whole lot of bias going on. And so we had a big resolution thing, a big meeting. What came to pass was, at my request, that I wanted an apology from the major. And I wanted it to go out that was not allowed anymore. There was no affirmative action in those days. It was kind of loosey-goosey, to say the very least. But it was a very lofty resolution to have it change, but it didn't really. But it started. So it was kind of a wedge got put into it. So it was, they kind of became aware that they're being watched now, and this wasn't going to be tolerated anymore. So pretty soon after this, I was upgraded to aircraft commander. And in 1985, myself, and on the far right is Cheryl. She was my first officer, and Trish Mackett was the navigator. And you see the ladies plugging in the power. So that was like a very cool picture for us. We had the first all-female crew on the Herc. Did a trip across Canada with taking, I think, air cadet students back and forth to camps. I had a few token males on board the airplane, I have to admit, because all the positions were not covered by women at that point. They are now, but they weren't then. All right. I continued to kind of accumulate flying hours, and the press started wanting to interview me because I was still fairly new. There still wasn't many women doing the job. So they gave me really attention-grabbing headlines like "Micky at home in giant planes." I just thought that was very stunning. It was really a claim to fame, I think. I started to get flying certificates for hours. That's what that upper middle picture is. And I met the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Cuba on a trip. So that, if I don't know if you recognize that gentleman in the striped tie, but that's Raul Castro. So Fidel's brother, Raul, he was at the Canadian Embassy when we went to Cuba. I was posted out to 429 Squadron in 1986. I was flying navigator students for all of their training in Winnipeg. The corner of Portage and Main Streets in Winnipeg is the coldest place on the planet. I was driving a little Toyota MR2 at the time, and there's times when I got stuck in ruts and I could not get out of them. I had to go until the road opened up so I could get around a corner. So it was an interesting place to live. I managed to get a posting to 435 Squadron in 1987. I got my introduction there to search and rescue on the C-130, and this kind of put me back in the same geographic location as my husband-to-be. So we married in 89. Very much easier when you're living in the same province, at least. And our daughter was born in 1990, and we ended back in Trenton together as a family in 1992. So in 1991, I was offered an opportunity to attend the first Canadian Women in Aviation Conference. It was at Trinity Western University in Fort Langley. And it was an eye-opening experience for me. It was incredibly positive because you're very isolated when you're in a minority grouping, and it's really nice to get in with a whole bunch of people feeling the same way you do. During this conference, they had said they're going to put another one on in 2 years. I got a chance to go back to that. And then the second one, they asked if there was anybody who would like to organize one of the conferences, the next one in 1995. So I did that along with a couple of ladies that were there. We had it in Hamilton, Ontario. I was posted to 424 Squadron, which is a search and rescue squadron here in Trenton at that time, flying the Herc. And I was able to get the standby crew to bring tail number 327 into Hamilton for the ladies to see it, because they had most people have never been inside a Hercules. It's just not something you don't get an opportunity to do so. And while we were there, the Lancaster came back from an air show. So the Lancaster's name is Vera. Her call sign is Charlie Golf Victor Romeo Alpha, VRA, hence Vera. So she belongs to the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum in Hamilton, and their crew got off the airplane, saw all these women on the ramp and just pitched right in, like they were in there like Flint. So they allowed us to sit in the cockpit of her. She is a very venerable airplane. She's also incredibly cranky. She went back across the North Atlantic in 2014 for a reunion with her sister ship at RAF Coningsby. That's where the Battle of Britain memorial flight is. She was not amused by this. The crew said that she delighted in breaking various and sundry important parts of herself all the way across the North Atlantic out of spite and pique. And I had the pleasure of seeing her flying with the British Lancaster, the only 2 flying Lancaster bombers in the world. At Guildwood, which is a kind of a big get-together that they do there. So we still have those Canadian Women in Aviation conferences, by the way. The next one will be in May in Montreal. I was invited to take the Hercules and my family to an air show in Kitchener in '96. I took Erin. She's always been a really great flyer, Erin. I flew the first 3 months of my pregnancy with her aboard, literally. And it was in those days, it was kind of unusual, let's just say, for one of your pilots to be pregnant. So it did kind of freak out my co-pilots a little bit, but they got over it. I figured I was going to have to stop flying when my belly got so big I couldn't pull back to land. You know, it was kind of going to be one of those things. So at the time, I was on the original variant of the Herc, the E model. And like an old car, it starts to age out. You know, so many hours, so many pressure cycles, they start to give up. So the Air Force started looking at the J model, which is what these pictures are. So Lockheed came calling. I got a chance to go and fly the airplane. It was completely different tech than what I was used to. It took Canada a long time to upgrade to the Js, but they're there. They got them, so it's cool. They're in place, but it's that was a neat airplane. That wasn't for me anyway, so that's good. You know, it's time for me to go. I had been posted to a number of different roles in Trenton since arriving in '92. I was recycling through a whole bunch of them. And by the time 2000 rolled around, I was a search and rescue check pilot and an instrument check pilot. Gave me quite a few flying hours, but most of it standing behind the seat, which is not nearly as much fun as flying the airplane, but it was still accumulating hours. So I was starting to creep up on the 5,000 hour point at that point. And I hit that magic number on a trip from Thule, Greenland back to Trenton. I got the left seat, just my luck, top of climb, got a prop oil. Number 1, had to shut the engine down and flew home on 3 air engines. So my 5,000 hour landing back home was a bit more dramatic than I had counted on it being, but it was still okay. But I was currently the 8-wing flight safety officer. And so not only did I have an incident in flight, I had to read all the paperwork once I got home as well. So that was a bummer, but you know, it happens. The base newspaper was on hand, got my picture taken again. And my husband met me and gave me a glass of champagne, which was cool. And it's not that often you get to hug your hubby when you're in uniform. So that was a kind of a neat event. All right. So I was flying in with 424 Squadron in 206 when the squadron was tasked to pick up the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, in Iqaluit and fly him, Minister of National Defense, staff and media up to Alert, which is, of course, as far north as you can pretty well get in Canada. Coincidentally, on this trip to the north, I hit 6,000 flying hours. So I went to the back. I was just having a lovely conversation with the Prime Minister, and he graciously signed my logbook. So there's a picture of him, my logbook signed. So when I went, it was funny because he had a sense of humor. So when I went to the back, he said, "Who's flying the airplane?" I said, "Oh my God." He just, the look on his face was like, it was so worth it, you know. It really was. Yeah, I have to stop doing things like that. I think he probably, you know, had a small heart connection at the time. So yeah. All right. So if I can take you back in history, just for a minute. On a frozen cold morning in 1909, in Baddeck, Nova Scotia, the Silver Dart made its inaugural flight. It was 2009 was the 100th anniversary of powered flight and aircraft flight in Canada. And the CF-18 was painted, especially for that event, and went to air shows all through the summer. It had 100 names for 100 years of aviation pioneers. So unbeknownst to me, I had been selected to get my name put on it, and I didn't even know it. I went to look at the airplane, I thought it was gorgeous. You know, the paint job was amazing, not knowing that my name was sitting on the front edge of it. So I thought that was very cool. Somebody actually brought it to my attention about a month later. Oh, I saw your name on the airplane. I said, what airplane? You know, good. It's good to be oblivious. What can I tell you? You know. All right. So as I approached kind of the last 10 years of my Rig Force time, I was still flying, but I was really settled now into search and rescue. And that was my absolute favorite role on the C-130. I cycled back and forth between 424 squadron posting and the standards and evaluation unit, which means I was a check pilot. It was a black hat that made everybody uncomfortable when I showed up. But SAR was, again, as I said, my favorite role. I've always kind of approached each SAR mission with the premise I was looking for my own family members. So by its nature, search and rescue is a highly emotional and very heart-centric kind of job. It's rewarding, gratifying, and painful, all kind of wrapped in one package. And I admit, though, that the thrill of working within 100 feet of the ground in an airplane with a 100-foot wingspan is very exhilarating, sometimes too exhilarating. But it's the reason I never went to an airline, was because can you imagine, like Air Canada, if the pilots took you down 100 feet, they opened up the doors and started throwing stuff out. You know, can you hear the passengers screaming right from here? It would be like amazing. So yeah, so that never really appealed to me. That kind of excitement just kept me going all the way along. I finally decided to leave the Rig Forces and join the reserves in 2011. I secured a position as a flight dispatcher with 424. It meant that if there was a SAR call out, they would call me and I would call out the crew and let them know whatever details we had. It was a 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day job. There's somebody always on call to go and do SAR. All holidays. In 2016, one of the oldest Hercules, tail number 307, was retired with over 47,000 flying hours on her. I first flew her on 9, and these are not easy flying hours. Let's know, they were hard flying hours. So I flew her on the 9th of July, 1986, the very first time I flew that airplane, when I was posted to 429. She's moved around the country a little bit at that point. The Canadian Air and Space Museum in Ottawa acquired her, and I planned her retirement flight. So I got together a veritable kind of who's who of Herc aircrew. The combined hours of the people in the back of that airplane was in excess of 50,000 flying hours on the C-130. So there was a lot of Herc knowledge back there. So the guy flying the airplane was feeling a little centered, right? If we're all watching what he's doing. Everybody's been there. It was a great day, though. And it was sad to see her go into a museum. She's still there. I go to visit her every so often when I'm in Ottawa. At this point, though, I was starting to feel like a little bit like an ancient aviator. And it kind of came home when I was standing beside those two young people, those two air cadets. That's in front of tail number 314, which is the very first Herc I ever flew. And she's the one that's on display in the air park at Trenton at the base. Before I retired, though it really came to home, I was flying a check ride on an aircraft commander, and I found out I had flown with 3 of the crew members' fathers. So that's when I kind of knew maybe it was time for me to hang up the wings, you know, a little bit and carry on. So in 2018, I retired from the Air Force at the ripe old age of 60. I was nominated for the Northern Lights Aero Foundation Elsie McGill Award that year. And Elsie McGill was the first woman to earn a master's degree in aeronautical engineering. She earned that in 1929 at the University of Toronto. She was known as the Queen of the Hurricanes. She was a chief aeronautical engineer at Canadian Car and Foundry in Fort William, now Thunder Bay, during the Second World War, and she headed the production of the Hawker Hurricane. She was a trailblazer of the highest order, and I was really honored to be presented with an award in her name. But now suddenly I was completely retired. I had gone back to school in 2017. The Air Force had offered me that opportunity, and I got a veterinary assistant certificate at St. Lawrence College. But I didn't know what to do with it. There's something I wanted to do. I'd been horse crazy all my life. I'd always had horses. I always bugged my parents to buy me a pony. It wasn't until I grew up and kind of made my own money that I could actually afford to buy one of my own. but something was still missing. So serendipity came into play. I fell into the field world. Field is facilitated equine experiential learning. I was accepted into a year-long course, graduated in 2019, just in time for COVID to shut down the world, which is exciting. It was not exciting. So it's a kind of a unique collaboration field between horse and human. The horse is the teacher, I'm the mouth, the facilitator. Horses speak, but they don't speak in words we understand. They have a lot to say. Mine are very opinionated. So they do this kind of guiding thing. Horses have an emotional resonance that can't be matched by almost any other animal. Sometimes dogs, but these are a much bigger presence, of course. So I went from 16,800 horsepower down to 4. My business partners, Tango, Henry, Riley, and Tig, didn't much care about shutdowns or COVID or viruses. They just wanted to work. They wanted to eat. They wanted to have grass. But the provincial government decided that since therapeutic business like mine were conducted mostly outside, I could open during COVID. So that helped. So I had a lot of people come trying to get out of the concrete jungles in Toronto. So our journey is kind of continued from that day forward to this day now. Riley has since crossed the Rainbow Bridge. I still miss his wisdom. He was one of the smartest horses I have ever known. He was really terrific with clients, but he's got a brother from another mother who's kind of stepped up to fill his hooves, as it were. So these are some of my newest members. The one on the left is Apollo, very handsome guy, slightly less than handsome, but immensely appealing sidekick is Mirabella, the pot-bellied pig. She rules everything she owns, and she owns everything she sees. So pigs are different. They're quite independent. So I'm very much enjoying, though, my post-Air Force career. I love living on a farm in the county. I'm very happy and honored to have been invited to speak to you today, and I'm quite happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Yes, but sorry.
Question?
Yeah.
Speak into the microphone with the questions, please.
It's coming.
So were you the first female driver?
No, Leah Mosier was. Leah's passed from us now too, but she was the first aircraft commander and the first female pilot to be posted to the HERC. She was just before me.
Congratulations anyways.
Thank you.
And all those hours,
Yeah, it's a long time.
The second thing is that the HERC flies search and rescue up north.
Yeah.
And do people know about the dark packages? I think they are sitting in Trent, or do you still have those in case there's a crash up in the Arctic and it's an airline?
As far as I know, they still carry those supplies. Yeah, it was part of the responsibility of the not just the SAR squadrons in Trenton, but the transport guys as well.
So the theory is if an aircraft goes down in the Arctic, a complete kit, including snowmobiles and everything, that they can fly in a HERC, right?
Yep, that's right. And water and food and all and tents and yeah. And they would take the medical guy, like they would go up with the kit first, and then the medical guys and all the SAR techs would all
Did you
go.
ever have memorial trips up there in the search and rescue? One that stood out?
There was one that stood out. We got tasked to look for a gentleman from a very northern community who'd gone out solo in a big green canoe. I don't know if you've ever seen there. They've got like 40-foot canoes out there, and he didn't come home when he was supposed to. So we went looking for him, and we found somebody alone on an island, found the canoe, dropped in a radio to him, and he said, could you just drop me some water and food? I'm not going to go home for another week. I caught an elk or something. There's no way for him to told anybody. He was in his 80s. So, they are got to be the toughest people on earth. I swear. They're amazing people. I mean, I would have just like expired right away, like I'm cold. I don't want to be here anymore. But yeah, they're amazing. It's pretty cool.